Dear Grade 12, I am Mrs. V. Ramlal. Welcome to the Junior Tucky Winter School for Grade 12s. There will be a series of videos which will be live streamed in the next few weeks on Junior Tucky Online. Please use this material as revision and also look at all the Grade 12 content in Life Sciences on Junior Tucky Online. This video is on a few quick win tips. It's a few tips to help you to prepare for your exams and also a few things that you must not get confused with. Right. What must you not get confused with? What content must you know very, very well? Okay, now let's look at corpus luteum. Corpus luteum and corpus callosum. Sound similar but is completely different from each other. Corpus luteum is in the menstrual cycle. It forms after the Gr12 follicle bursts. The corpus callosum is in the brain. It links two hemispheres of the brain together and maintains communication between the two hemispheres. So make sure you know the difference between the corpus luteum and the corpus callosum. Remember also, the corpus luteum produces progesterone. Corpus callosum is in the brain. Now, the next thing don't get confused with is the chorion and the choroid. The chorion is an extraembryonic membrane that forms the chorionic villi, which is part of the placenta. The choroid is the middle layer in the eye, which prevents internal reflection of light in the eye and contains blood vessels. Then, the umbilical artery. Very important. Don't get confused between the umbilical artery and the umbilical vein. The artery carries deoxygenated blood, whereas the vein carries oxygenated blood. This is the one mistake that many learners make. Please know the difference between the cerebrum and cerebellum. We will cover this later, as well as parasympathetic and sympathetic, oval window, round window, glucose, glucagon, and insulin. So these are a few things that you must not get confused with and make sure you know very well. Right, let's get down to our quick win tips. Right, reproductive strategies is 8 marks. You must be able to distinguish between the following terms. Ovipary. It's an organism that lays eggs. Here, obviously the egg is laid outside the female body. Vivipary, an organism that gives birth to live young. Ovovivipary, an organism that forms the egg inside the female's body. The egg hatches inside the female's body and the female gives birth to live young. As you can see, it's a combination of vivipary and ovipary. Altricial development. This can relate to organisms or birds that are less advanced, their eyes are closed, and is dependent on the parents and has no feathers. Precocial development could be for organisms or birds that are in an advanced state, has open eyes, is independent, and has feathers. Now, you must also know how to label the amniotic egg, as well as know the functions of the structures as well. Also know how the embryo is protected in the amniotic egg. Now we know the egg shell is calcareous, it's hard to protect the embryo, and the amniotic fluid is also there for protection. Reproduction in humans for 41 marks. Know spermatogenesis and oogenesis word for word from the exam guidelines. Also know in spermatogenesis only meiosis occurs, whereas in oogenesis, mitosis and meiosis occurs. Know how to draw an ovum and a sperm as well as the adaptations of the ovum and the sperm. Learn the male reproductive system well. Know epididymis. Many cannot spell epididymis and most likely you will be asked to label this structure or be asked this as a term. Also know that sperm can only be produced at 2 degrees below body temperature, and that's the reason for the testes being outside the male's body. Learn the hormones FSH and luteinizing hormone. FSH is follicle stimulating hormone. Estrogen. Know that estrogen makes the endometrium lining thick, vascular glandular. Why? For implantation. Progesterone makes the endometrium lining more thicker, more vascular, more glandular for implantation. And then, very important, this negative feedback mechanism for progesterone and FSH you must know. The negative feedback mechanism where the high amounts of progesterone inhibit FSH. And if there's no follicle stimulating hormone secreted, no follicles are produced, No ovulation takes place, which will lead to no fertilization. Embryonic development, very important. The diploid zygote undergoes mitosis to form a ball of cells, which is called the morula. The morula undergoes more mitosis to form a hollow ball of cells called the blastocyst. And then in the umbilical cord, know the function and label of the umbilical vein and the artery. Now, nervous system is 54 marks. Know the divisions of the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is made up of the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system is made up of your cranial nerves and spinal nerves in your somatic nervous system, and your autonomic nervous system is made up of your parasympathetic and sympathetic systems. These systems are antagonistic. The sympathetic system increases the heart rate or heartbeat, and the parasympathetic will decrease the heartbeat or the heart rate. A common mistake that many make. The cerebrum controls voluntary actions, interprets sight and hearing. The cerebellum coordinates voluntary actions and is for balance. When it comes to a reflex action, you must say a reflex action is a rapid response to a stimulus, and reflex actions are performed by the spinal cord. Know the pathway of a reflex arc in case you asked to draw this arc as well. So receptor, sensory neuron, dorsal root ganglion, dorsal root, interneuron, motor neuron, ventral root, and effector. The eye. Ciliary muscles are used in accommodation, and the circular muscles are found in the iris and are used in the pupillary mechanism. Do not get confused. Many learners switch this. So when you're learning this and when you're writing this especially, concentrate when you're writing this. I've also included an answer that you can memorize for pupillary mechanism here and for accommodation as well. But please do not go into that exam not knowing pupillary mechanism and accommodation very well. They can put you in a situation. They can base your question on a scenario. So please make sure you know your work well and you'll be able to apply your work as well. The ear. Oval window transmits vibrations to the inner ear. Know that the round window absorbs excess pressure from the sound waves. So don't get confused between the oval window and the round window. The round window, if it does not absorb excess pressure from the sound waves, there will be an echo or distortion of sound. Know the function of the eustachian tube as well. Also learn the spelling. The eustachian tube, maintains equal pressure on either side of the tympanum. Now, I've included an answer for balance in the cristae and in the macula. So when you asked what happens to the cristae when it reacts to changes in speed and direction, this is the answer that you must write down. When you asked about the balance with regards to the macula, which picks up changes in the position of the head in relation to gravity, this is your answer that you write down. For those of you that are confused and you don't know what to write when it comes to the cristae and the macula, and if you're confused with balance. The endocrine system. The endocrine system will count for 34 marks. Now, in the endocrine system, you must know the position of the glands. You must know the functions of the hormones, and notice you will use the word more and less a lot in your answer. You must also study the negative feedback mechanism between thyroid stimulating hormone and thyroxine, AD8, which is antidiuretic hormone, aldosterone, and insulin and glucagon. Please remember, thyroxine is responsible for your basal metabolic rate, which is basically the rate of cell aspiration. Also remember that glucose converts excess glucose into glycogen to be stored in the liver. Always mention the liver in your answer as well. Glucagon, this is the spelling for glucagon. Make sure the spelling is correct. Glucagon increases the blood glucose level and insulin decreases the blood glucose level. Right, let's look at homeostasis. Homeostasis is to maintain a constant internal environment. I've included here what happens on a hot day, what happens on a cold day. Very, very important. The hypothalamus is the thermostat of the body. Now, on a hot day, the hypothalamus is stimulated and will send a message first to the blood vessels. Now, it's hot, and we know that blood carries a lot of heat, so the blood vessels will dilate, become wider. This is called vasodilation. So more blood flows to the surface of the skin and more heat will be lost by radiation. Because more blood is flowing in the skin, more blood is sent to the sweat glands, which activates the sweat gland to secrete more sweat, more evaporation of the sweat, which cools the body, and that will bring your temperature back to normal. Cold day, the exact opposite happens. Your hypothalamus is stimulated, sends a message to the blood vessels to constrict. Less blood flows to the surface of the skin. This is called vasoconstriction. If less blood flows to the surface of the skin, less heat is lost by the skin by radiation. Less blood flows to the sweat glands, so less sweat will be released and less evaporation of the sweat, less cooling of the body, more heat is conserved, and that will bring your temperature back to normal. Now, very important. I have seen this question come out many times. It will not be the last time it will come out in your exams. So, the regulation of carbon dioxide. So, when your blood carbon dioxide levels increase above normal, there are receptor cells, chemoreceptors in the carotid artery in the neck that are stimulated. These cells send a message to the medulla oblongata in the brain, which in turn sends messages to the breathing muscles, the intercostal muscles and the diaphragm and the heart. The breathing muscles will contract more, which can cause the increase in the rate and depth of breathing. So you're breathing faster and deeper, and you take in more oxygen and exhale more carbon dioxide. The heart is also going to beat faster, so you can send more oxygenated blood to the cells and remove more deoxygenated blood with carbon dioxide from the cells. More carbon dioxide is taken to the lungs to be exhaled, and the carbon dioxide levels will return back to normal. My advice to you is know this very well. And then lastly, plant hormones. Know what is apical dominance and where lateral branches form. Know phototropism. Here's a diagram of phototropism. We know that auxin is produced in the tips. We know auxin is exposed here to unilateral light, and auxin is sensitive to light, so it moves to the shady part of the shoot. And because there's more auxin on the shady part, there'll be more cell division, elongation, growing and bending towards light, and this is the cells here on this side that grows towards light, and this is phototropism. Light is on top of the shoot, so it means the shoot is exposed to light from all directions. So the auxin moves down evenly, as you can see, and the shoot will grow straight upwards. So know phototropism well. Geotropism, very important. So phototropism is when the part of the plant reacts to light. Geotropism is when the part of the plant reacts to gravity. So here is a diagram that shows you the effects of gravity. And if you look here, this is half of the stem and the root. This is what happens when you turn a pot plant sideways. The stem is always going to grow upwards and the root will always grow downwards because of geotropism. Here is the explanation for what happens in the roots, what happens in the stem. So in the root, the upper side, there's a low auxin concentration, and that stimulates cell elongation. And this will cause the cells on the upper side to elongate and grow and bend downwards towards gravity, whereas in the underside of the auxin in the root inhibits cell elongation. In the stem, it's the exact opposite. A high auxin concentration on the underside will stimulate cell elongation and cause the cells to grow and bend away from gravity, and the low auxin concentration on the upper side will inhibit cell elongation. Please, and it grows away from gravity. Do not bring in phototropism. Well, I hope these tips will help you, and I hope you will use these tips wisely. And I wish you all the best in your exams. Thank you for joining me and watching these videos. Join me and watch all my other videos as well.